Hello? Anybody there?
Hello. Yes, Sam. We're about to start. We're just waiting for Javier,
Okay.
and we'll start. We'll give you a minute.
How many people you have?
We're broadcasting live now. We started broadcasting just a minute, and we have around 15
Okay.
people. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, sir. After some technical difficulties, here I am. Can you
Hello,
hear me?
Javier.
How are you, sir? How are things?
Fine.
Fine. Let me just say an announcement in Spanish.
Okay.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todos por el día de hoy estar acá con nosotros en este conversatorio. En especial, me gustaría comentarles a todos que hay traducción o interpretación en español, entonces ahí pueden seleccionar si lo quieren escuchar en español o en inglés. Y en ese sentido, esto. I was just telling them, sir, that we've got translations for Spanish, so that's something I just wanted to share with you, and in that sense. And without, let me just real quick give a brief introduction. Would you mind if the introduction I gave it in Spanish?
Whatever you want.
Okay.
That's no problem. I have no issues. I appreciate.
Okay, let me just introduce you so we can set the stage real quick. Bueno, pues el día de hoy bienvenidos al conversatorio. Me gustaría dar la más cordial bienvenida al doctor Sam Pitroda. Sam Pitroda es una persona extraordinaria, tiene un gran conocimiento en términos técnicos, es empresario, asesor político, 50 años más de experiencia, es un caso de estudio de la Harvard Business School. Es el hombre que a lo largo de su carrera ha logrado la conectividad para millones, cientos de millones de personas, como revolucionó el sistema de telecomunicaciones en la India en los 80s y últimamente en los 2000s lo que logró fue replantear todo el sistema de fibra óptica o fibra oscura que había en toda la India para que se pudieran mejorar las velocidades de intercambio de todos. Adicionalmente a esto fue el presidente de la Comisión Nacional de Conocimiento. Es una persona que lo que cree es que el conocimiento es la manera en la cual la población puede cambiar su realidad y que puede salir adelante. Debo decir también que es de los principales promotores de la filosofía y la visión de Gandhi. Ha sido parte de la reconstrucción, la digitalización también del Gandhi Ashram, que me parece muy importante dejarlo de manifiesto. Fue asesor directo del primer ministro Manmohan Singh recientemente y también junto con el primer ministro Rajiv Gandhi también trabajó junto con él. Y hay que decirlo, Sam Pitroda ha sido visto como un futurista, alguien que ve más adelante, que genera y que sobre todo está buscando cómo siempre encontrar una distinta forma o una distinta realidad. Recientemente está presentando o va a presentar un nuevo libro de cómo ve que el mundo se debe de rediseñar y pues tengo mucho agrado de estar el día de hoy con él. Y una vez que les digo esto en español, ya me voy a pasar en inglés, ¿ok? Entonces, sir, sorry, I've just introduced you very briefly. I've spoken about a bit of your Gandhian views, also what you've done in the late 80s regarding connectivity and the Harvard Business Case Study, while on the other hand, also your rekindling of the communications infrastructure during the 2000s with the knowledge network, the Indian knowledge network. And in that sense, today we're talking, or what we're trying to look at is cities. I know you're a firm admirer of cities, and also you have these visions of what a city can be. And many times we lack these very heartfelt views on how cities should work and what should they be spaces for. Some visualize them as spaces for the development of resources, or some of leisure, some of health. But at the end of the day, it's where human beings actually live. And in that sense, I just really wanted to talk to you about just around 3 areas. Even though you might have something else planned, I always throw in a couple of things. Something regarding how you see that city economies are going to move about. Bearing in mind there's a COVID crisis that eventually will be sorted. Yet on the other hand, cities are changing and people are changing within them. And also we are mostly, and as you've constantly said, we are hyper connected. And how is this hyper connectivity changing how we see our own reality? Finally, and bearing in mind that you are a close friend of Mexico and that you've been here for quite a couple of decades, all the way from when we started our telecommunications authority till recently when you've worked, when I had the opportunity to work side by side with you, and nowadays that you are pushing forth new visions world over. And in that sense, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and so that we could share. I must also say, sir, that we are live, and I want to thank Centro Urbano, which is one of the key distributors of content, urban content in all of Mexico, and Horacio Urbano, which is the head of it, is supporting us. And anyway, our reach is beyond just the Zoom platform, but also we're live on Facebook. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and go ahead.
Thank you, Javier. Really appreciate the opportunity. I have been coming to Mexico for a long time, ever since 1975. Mexico is my third home beside US, India. Mexico is my favorite countries in Latin America. I admire your culture, your history, your art, and I find people in Mexico very friendly. I'm always at home in Mexico. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to interact. Urbanization is a major global challenge. Almost 50% of the population in the world, which is over 3.5 billion, would be living in urban areas soon. Because people from all over rural communities come to urban areas looking for employment, opportunities, and quality of life. With it, urban areas bring lots and lots of challenges. Life in urban areas is not as rosy as people believe it is. It is rosy for some, but not for all. Those who come to urban areas with great dreams from rural communities all over the world, whether it is in Mumbai, Mexico, Sao Paulo, or even in Beijing, find it that they really wind up with very complex challenges. Life for them still remains that of a migrant. They are not quite integrated into the city. And when you look at urban challenge today, essentially it is a challenge related to security, safety. That's one big area in all urban areas. This is a challenge which needs to be addressed, especially for the poor at the bottom of the economic pyramid, people in slum. Then you have basic issues related to education, health, housing, environment, water, waste management, energy. You also have issues of transport, employment, governance. How do you begin to address these issues in new light when you have hyperconnectivity, new technology, new tools, and new opportunities? Most of our cities have been designed based on the paradigm of the past. Most of the cities grow haphazardly without proper planning. People just go on building one after another without really looking at larger architectural issues which require focus on community as opposed to housing, industry. So we plan based on micro element and not on macro element. So when I look at challenge today, I see that we have essentially not used all of the modern tools and technology for planning of our urban restructuring. Today we have tools of satellite imagery, GIS, three-dimensional view of the street corners, labeling of every shop, movement of people based on mobile phone. So I think hyperconnectivity implies not just connecting people, broadband and data, but also satellite imagery, 3D planning tools. So when you combine these two with hyperconnectivity and tools for image processing, whole new picture emerge. Whole new picture in terms of migration of people, movement of people, living of people. In many cities, you find that people who live in north work in south. People who work in south live in north. And how do you make this transition and proper planning so people begin to minimize travel time, travel distance? Is a big challenge in all major metro areas. Coronavirus has shown us that you really don't need to travel all the time. A lot of our meetings, lunch-on meetings and brief conversations, we can have it on web. Nowadays, I have my lunch meetings with people in New York, Florida, US, sort of other part, including California. They may have lunch, I have a coffee. The idea is to really minimize travel as much as possible by using these new tools. It's a mindset issue. We are not used to it yet. Look at the impact of this on education. Not just work. Impact of hyperconnectivity on health, infrastructure. All of this today is in infancy. No one has really put together this big puzzle to improve transport, health, education, housing, using hyperconnectivity. And this is a major, major challenge for us. When I look at impact of COVID-19, I think of a whole new model of development. I believe we are going to pay more attention to localization versus globalization. I believe we are going to pay more attention to decentralization, distributed architecture, smaller systems as opposed to big mega enterprise to scale. See, one idea is to scale things through mega enterprise in one place, or scale through distributed architecture by networking. So I think hyperconnectivity, along with the corona crisis, has forced us to think about restructuring our urban life. Smart cities are not about just technology. I would rather build a happy city and not a smart city. How do you make local communities happier so their needs related to security, education, health, housing, culture, art are met locally? This will give rise to new ideas like vertical farming. It is going to give new ideas on travel. Today, technology is all there to really redesign our cities. But we don't have the political will to really shake up our existing infrastructure in the city, reshuffle, and redesign to meet the needs of the future with hyperconnectivity as the key tool. And to me, Mexico City is a classical example. Mexico City is one of the largest cities in the world. It is indeed heart of Mexican economy. How do you restructure Mexico City using hyperconnectivity to really improve quality of life for millions and millions at the bottom of the economic pyramid? Those who are at the top, they have it all settled. They are living comfortably. They have enough money and resources. The key is, what do you do with the slums in Mexico City? What do you do for the poor in Mexico City? How do you provide the right education to their children? How do you provide health for all in Mexico City? And that's where hyperconnectivity becomes important. We have not really created a good database of our people in urban areas. Who are they? What are they? Where do they live? What do they do? How do you reach out to them? Where are their jobs? How do they make living? It's all possible to do it today. Everyone talks about it, but nobody does it. Because it is not really paying to people at the top of the pyramid. So people don't pay attention to the needs of the people at the bottom of the economic pyramid. I think urbanization today needs to be relooked at, mainly in light of hyperconnectivity, lessons we have learned from coronavirus, and people at the bottom of the economic pyramid, migrant workers, children of poor, their education. They are as smart as anybody else. They don't get the opportunity. They don't get the right health services. And it's not very expensive to provide these things if we use technology effectively. And look at the education. Today, because of corona crisis, there is an education crisis all over the world. We don't know what to do with education. Should it be online? Should it be in classrooms? Can you really keep physical distance, social distance in classroom? Are our teachers trained to be mentors? What do we do? So corona crisis is resulting into education crisis. Why should children pay all the tuition fee if they are not going to go to the classroom? Why should they pay for transport if they are not going to be leaving their home? What would teachers do in this corona crisis? What are they teaching? Do they have the course material? Do they know how to use technology to teach? Because this corona crisis is here to stay. It is not going away in a month. I believe it is here to stay for at least a year, maybe even more, in some form or the other. Life is not going to get back to normal. Believe me. We know it from the experiences in US and other places where we have opened up too soon, numbers have increased. Because people interact, People are not used to social distancing, wearing masks. And schools are very critical because children would have difficult time following these norms. So you cannot begin to open schools too early. And to me, education is going to be a major crisis all over the world. What do you do with all these teachers? You have to keep on paying them. Who will pay them? I don't think we have thought through this education crisis carefully. As you know, in the US, President Trump decided to open universities and schools, and there was backlash. So now everyone is trying half online, half not online, but there is no clarity. And it's going to happen in Mexico as well. And this is going to be a major challenge in Mexico City. So I would say we need a new plan for urbanization in Mexico and in almost all countries. Some are better off and some are really worst off. The key is, how do you create new paradigm using hyperconnectivity as the core to plan your city? And this includes new tools, like I said earlier, satellite imagery, GIS, three-dimensional view of every street, labeling every position, understanding movement of people. How do kids come to university? We don't know. How do they come? Where do they come from? What time do they come from? All of it today can be organized without really worrying about personal security, privacy. You don't need to know about one particular individual. You need to know about large number of people and their movement. I don't think anyone has really looked at this in totality. There are some great experiments. I know one in Hawaii where they did a lot of good planning using satellite imagery. I had an opportunity to meet up with mayor several years ago. And this also reflects on your planning and security. Police force. Where are they? What are they doing? How do they react with the community? Nightlife, bars, restaurants, cultural space. You need totally new thinking. And the conversation today is all about, as Javier pointed out, how do you use this hyperconnectivity to revive economy? Economy can only be revived if we create new model. And we need to really draw a baseline, saying this is where we are. All the jobs, as we understand from the past, are not coming back. Then what are the new jobs? How do you create decentralized workforce? How do you create distributor architecture for the companies? And these are the challenges that require new mindset and new planning. I think opportunity is huge. The key is there political will to do it? We can have a nice conversation. But if mayor of the city is not concerned about any of these things, what good is it? If mayor of the city says, look, I want to do complete replanning based on hyperconnectivity and new technology to really restructure my city, we have a good start. And if mayor has the political will behind him or her, with all the political bosses, domain experts will all come together. The starting point is really new conversation. And I'm glad that Javier has taken the initiative to start this new conversation. If we begin new conversation, we can generate political will. And if we can generate political will, we can come up with a plan. I'll be happy to participate, happy to help. I'm a great admirer of Mexico City as well. I enjoy when I go there. Food, art, culture, meetings with friends and family. And I believe Mexico City is a great place to think of urbanization in new light. With this, I want to thank Javier for giving me this opportunity. I'll be happy to interact, answer questions, learn from you, and see how we can all work together to really create new paradigm on urbanization. Thank you, Javier.
Thank you, sir. As always, very generous with your time and also with all of us. I appreciate it. I just had a slight question. You know how there are different models or different worldviews? You know, there are in geopolitics, you have different countries and different groups create different potential realities. Some are liberal, some are not. And in that sense, how do you feel that these different ways of looking at what the world should be interact? And because we come from a perspective on freedom and certain liberties, human rights, and so on and so forth, and there are some of these have permeated and some have not. But that has, at the end of the day, it boils down to how people live in the everyday lives. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on how these different worldviews are interacting right now.
See, today there are basically two main designs of the world. One is the US-based design, which I believe in, I grew up with, that gave birth to UN, World Bank, NATO, WTO, GDP, GNP, and all that. And that design focused on democracy, freedom, capitalism, consumption, and military. That design, to some extent, is an open design. It welcomes everybody. Then you have another design, which is a China design right now. Earlier, it was Soviet Union design. That design, to me, is little close. It is a design that is more based on command and control, central leadership, less decentralization. Of course, they have their own democracy as well. You can't say that they don't have any democracy. But that democracy has certain boundaries. And we can argue about the boundaries. Okay. They also have freedom, but that freedom has certain boundaries. Freedom of speech is very different in both places. So I consider one as an open design and another one as a closed design. Hyperconnectivity, by its own nature, brings democratization, decentralization, demonetization, public participation, and forces you to open design. So I think going forward, the world will have to open more, including China will have to open more, because that's the human nature. You can empower people by opening your system. You cannot empower human being by closing. You look at the progress we have made in the last 70 years in technology. Most of the progress came from US. It came from open system. It came from a country which allowed immigrants to come in and flourish. It came from system which promoted research and development, invented transistor and laser and you name it. Everything got done here. Internet, microprocessors, laptops, mobile connectivity, you name it. Biotech, genetics, DNA. I think open system allows open thinking. And open thinking is very important for humanity to progress. Without science, there is no future. And science, in the long run, cannot be conducted in closed quarters. Of course, it works in certain ways. It worked in Soviet Union. Science was good, but it was good for the military use and not for the public consumption. In open system, science could benefit people at large. And that's what humanity needs today. So to answer your question, I believe we need to focus on open systems because hyperconnectivity demands open systems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I was just wondering also, and in that sense, trying to open the floor to any questions, please feel free. Then there's a lot of talk about the 5G technology and this hyper connectivity. And you coming from the telecom industry and knowing how these systems work, basically, what would you say is the key difference with these 5G technologies, or what can they, instead of looking like, what I love about what you do is you look at the future, like what could this thing enable, more than questioning whether it comes from or whatever is, what does 5G enable humanity?
Okay, if you look at the evolution of mobile connectivity, we had GSM standard, 2G, 3G, 4G. In each of these steps that we took up to 5G, there were two fundamental issues. One, speed. Speed of connectivity gets higher and higher. As we begin to use more and more bandwidth, I mean, the kind of conversation we are having today was not possible on 2G. Because now we use so much video. 2G was okay for a little bit of data here and there. 3G was okay. Now the video is the dominant way to communicate. You know, for example, I have half an hour to 1 hour every day conversation with my grandchildren. Now, can you imagine millions of grandparents talking to their children every day for an hour on video? The amount of bandwidth required for that is mind-boggling. So on one hand, video demands high bandwidth. On the other hand, multiple devices. Earlier, we only had cell phone. Now we will have doorknobs, refrigerators, 50 sensors in the car, lights. So every device would be connected to internet. And all of a sudden, rather than 7-10 billion mobile phones, you'll have 10 billion devices connected to mobile network. So coverage is also very important. So 5G is an evolution of higher bandwidth, better coverage. And when you do that, you begin to decentralize your base stations. So smaller base stations, lesser area for the cell, but very high speed, instant connectivity. Today, you can live with 4G to some extent. You don't have to have 5G, but you need 5G when you begin to expand your sensors, your input-output devices, and better bandwidth, better resolutions, better pictures, better zooming in, better resolution is the key. And that's why 5G is important.
So, sir, and now to contrast, we've talked about what like a cutting edge technology on one hand, and would you mind sharing, because you constantly talk about perhaps how the world has changed, and many of us, I myself, an exennial between a millennial Generation X, sometimes we forget to grasp where we come from. And I don't know if you could talk a little bit about how you see the key differences and how humanity has changed from when you grew up to what now the young are growing up. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Javier. Thanks for asking that. You know, I always say that my grandparents living in India left for me a world which was fairly simple, fairly clean, but poor. Environment was not polluted. People were not complicated. People didn't move too much. They lived in their area. And they had character. They believed in certain values, wisdom. And they were part of their local community, didn't move too much. So people lived in one area for generations, and they were very well connected. Now, the world that I'm going to live for my grandchildren is very complex. Many people have lost their roots and they are moving all over. You don't know who they are, you don't know where they come from, you don't know their background, but they are moving. Two, the world is much richer. We have better planes, we can travel all over the world, we have better communication, we have lots of energy, we have a lot of comfort, homes are bigger. And in last 70 years, the progress we have made, including longevity, infant mortality, all that is phenomenal. And third, we have polluted our world. We have burned too much coal, so there is climate control problem. We have destroyed our forest. We have encroached in the space that wildlife used to enjoy. And we have a lot of challenges. In the process, young people have become, according to me, too self-centric. They want to be quick rich, at least in urban areas. They want instant gratification. They, to some extent, don't read as much as my generation read because they are on social media. They get their message differently. They believe in short sound bites, and they don't really go into the depth of things that my generation went into. Not that everyone is like that. You can't generalize it. But people don't read as much as we used to read. People don't take one subject and drive them deep in it. They all want to know a little bit about everything. Okay. So this generation is very different. But their job is also very complex because population has increased, opportunities are less, and their parents could buy a home when they were in 30s. Today's generation cannot buy their home when they're in 30s, at least in the US. And it is probably true in other countries as well, of Europe. Mainly because we are still following the old model. We need to begin to evolve new model of development. The individualism, to some extent, has been taken too far at times. And we begin to compartmentalize everybody. So young people have to live with young. Old people have to live with old. And not have this idea of cutting across generations. The jobs are a big challenge for young people because they still look for the old type of jobs. They are not creating new jobs fast enough. So on one hand, you can't find enough trained people for the new jobs. And you have lots of people ready to do old job which doesn't exist. Education system has remained sort of with the past and not with the future. Very few institutions prepare you for the job of tomorrow. And these are the challenges for the young people. You know, they have to have patience. They have to work harder. Not that they don't work hard. Okay. They have to create their own future. Nobody else is going to create their future. So they will have to think differently. Okay.
Then thank you for sharing those thoughts. Normally, in my experience, when somebody has lived more and has seen how the world has changed, it also makes us become grateful of where we're at and what took so many generations to build. One of these devices that we have, these mobile phones, are as even more powerful than our computers that were building size, you know, and we have them and we take them for granted many times.
I tell you, I have seen it all. You know, in 1955, when I got into IT, transistors devices were just coming up. So I bought 2-input NAND gate for $35. I bought 16-bit memory chip for $16 at some point in time. And you'll be surprised that microprocessor didn't exist until 74. Okay. You could imagine that you will have the power of a supercomputer on this phone of the past.
Yes.
I think humanity has come a long way. Today's generation is given lots and lots of new tools, but it needs new thinking. We have old mindset. Many times I say that we have 19th century mindset, 20th century processes, and 21st century needs. How do we bridge this? You know?
Yeah. And in that sense,
people don't get it done.
Agreed. There's a question from the audience, and which has its connection. It's so how does public innovation take place in the new normal? How can local governments speed up its adoption? I don't know if you have some thoughts around that.
First of all, local governments have to be open. See, most of the governments and bureaucracies are mentally locked in. They think they know it all. Public input is not really appreciated or welcomed that much. Most of the mayors won't go out and say, hey, I want public to tell me what needs to be done. And let's get 10 input from public and get that done. They will assume that we know what is good for public. So that is a challenge. So if public, let's say that mayor of Mexico City invited public to submit input and say, through crowdsourcing, we are going to define 10 biggest challenges for Mexico City. Not as I see it, but as public sees it. Have 3 months of conversation and then say, these are the 10 challenges, not just as problems, but as solutions. And then appoint 10 teams to solve those 10 problems. It can be done. But you need that political will to do that. Because that's not a normal way of doing it. Normal way is you go to your office, follow what your bureaucrats tell you, you make a little bit of promises which you never meet. So today's politics is such that you are there to make promises. You are not there to meet promises. But you make all kinds of promises to people. And this is a global phenomenon. I mean, look at all the leaders. They just go and say, we'll do this, we'll do that. And at the end, they don't do anything. Or they do very little. So I think that governance structure has to change. We have to hold our people accountable for what they say. But then people lie and they get away with it. Politicians lie through their teeth and they get away with it. What do you do? So ultimately it boils down to the character and value in leadership. Is leadership really working for the people or working for themselves? Look at corruption is a major problem all over the world. Ego is a big problem. All leaders have huge egos. How do we create public servants out of our leaders? How do we tell them that you are there to serve? You are given a great opportunity humanity can give you, is to serve your people. Do it for 5-10 years and then go do something else. But today, if I'm a leader, I want to control everything. I have the license to command and control. And these are challenges all over the world. Okay. And that's why we haven't made the progress we should have made everywhere. I mean, look at Africa. Okay. The amount of corruption. When I see a leader with all kinds of labels and hanging on their, jacket, it tells me something about that leader. Okay. Leader has to be simple, humble, servant of the people. ready to give and not take, has to have character. He has to believe in truth, trust. He has to believe in democracy, human rights, love, and he has to act accordingly. There aren't too many leaders in the world today who measure up to people like Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, as an example. I'm giving you example from my perspective. I'm sure there are examples in Latin America as well. Okay. Where are those leaders? We need leaders as public servants. And we need people who have empathy, not just sympathy. You know.
Can you elaborate a little bit about your thoughts on empathy before I go to the next question? Why is it important?
Because I have to feel it. I have to genuinely feel how my people feel if I was a leader. You know, I mean, look at this whole issue today in the US about Black Lives Matter. Okay. I mean, a great country like this, rich country like this, enlightened country like US, with all kinds of intellectuals, in 2020 is discussing race issue. Why can't we sort it out? We should have sorted it out 50 years ago. Everyone has to know that we were all blacks when we started. It is through genetic mutation we change our color and color of the eye and all that. So original human being was black. How could I discriminate another human being? How could I discriminate somebody who is handicapped? How can I discriminate somebody who is deprived of something? How could I discriminate old person who can't walk and still be good human? Okay. So I have to understand that everybody is equal. I love Mexican as much as I love Indian. You know, I have no difference in my eyes. They are human beings. They are my colleagues. They are my friends. They are part of me. And it don't require rocket science. It requires right soul. Okay. So Black Lives Matter has become a big issue today in this country. Look at how many blacks are in prison. Look at how they are treated. Look at how police deals with them. I mean, you have to deal with them as other human beings. You know, I have a friend, Toriano, and he said he has been stopped in his life 70 times or some 48 times by police for doing nothing. So he said, when I was young, as soon as I got out of the office, out of home, my fear was somebody's going to catch me. I mean, how can you live like that in a great country like America? And why can't we fix it? What is this white supremacy concept? I don't get it. Okay, but it's still there. You know, so I think it is all in our mind. We have to recognize that in this world, and I've said this many times, there are only two things that matter. First is planet. We need planet. Planet does not need human beings. Planet can survive without people because there are other life forms, millions, that will survive from elephant to bee. But we need planet. So we must take care of planet first, which means global warming, environment, water, trees, forests, bees, birds, animals, all that. It's our responsibility because we are fortunate to have the brains we have developed. Other species have not developed the brains like us. And we have been able to develop technology, tools, and all that because of our brains. So first most important thing is planet. And the second most important thing is people. We have to respect everybody. We have to be inclusive. starting from gender equality to equality of color, race, religion. I don't care what religion you follow. But I don't understand why it is so complicated. Why do we begin to divide as opposed to connect? A lot of it comes from insecurity. A lot of it comes from how I think of myself. If I think of myself as insecure, I find threat all over. If I think of myself as a secure, I love everybody. That's simple.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And in that sense, talking about connectedness, and just so that we kind of like wrap up slightly on in regards to hyperconnectivity, how do you see that? How do you see that cities might change with this hyperconnectivity beyond the sensor part? Like, what do you think our daily lives will look at in the future, and what role does hyperconnectivity play in this perhaps new paradigm?
Okay, first of all, we need to make sure that our cities are wired to provide ample bandwidth to every citizen at very low cost. It is a utility and not a luxury. So that's the first requirement. Are our cities really wired to provide maximum bandwidth as lowest possible cost to everybody all the time? It is the new energy, new lifeline, new water, new utility that you need to make sure you provide. Two, we have to make sure that all our resources are connected to the network, whether how we measure water level in a well, to how we replace bulb on the street, to what happens to fire department, to hospital. All kinds of things need to be connected to optimize use. And then one by one, we need to redo the design of the service. If you have all of this available, if you're wired properly, if you're connected properly, then you say, how do we change education? Do we want children to come to class every day? Or we can have children come once every week? Do they really need to come to class to listen to a guy giving a lecture, teacher? Or they can listen to him at home and come once a week to clean up their homework. It will change the pattern of transport. What services require doctor to talk on video? And what services require doctor to physically see a patient? Will have huge impact on transport. Today, just to show your face or tongue to doctor, you just drive 30 minutes, park, use gas, wait in line. There are 30 people waiting in the office, and then doctor sees you for 5 minutes. Come on. What a waste of resources. Doctor can see me on video. I need to change that paradigm. So I need to change education paradigm, health paradigm, transport paradigm, governance paradigm. It's a very big task. But it's a very simple task if you want to do it. And we don't have all the answers. We have a lot to learn. So we got to start from somewhere. Don't expect all the answers before you start, because there is no such thing. You are redesigning everything, so you got to experiment and learn as you go along. But you got to have political will. Everywhere there is lack of political will. So things don't get done.
And in that sense, and as a final thought, what do you think generates political will in people?
Real, genuine concern to serve people. Clarity of mind. Confidence in yourself. Not be concerned about what others would think. That's what leadership is all about, saying, what is my job and what am I supposed to do? And what would my people want me to do? Okay, it's not what I want to do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that lesson people don't take in leadership. Okay, leadership is not about command and control. Leadership, it is about collaboration, cooperation, communication. Okay, and when you are willing to listen to people, things will happen. How many mayors all over the world, when they take job, say that before I start my office, I want to spend a week or 10 days or a month listening to people in an organized way to find out what is that they want me to do for next 5 years. And then I'll come back and say, these are the 10 things people of my city have told me that I ought to do. And I'll focus on that. Not many people do that.
I was just thinking, and thanking you for it. I do remember this is an urban talk, and in a sense, like most of these ideas and thoughts happened in cities, and in that sense, and just as a final note on.
If Mayor of Mexico City wants to have a conversation, we'll be delighted. As you know, I had started this biometropolis idea when Marcelo Ebrard was mayor. Mm-hmm. It got put on the back burner. And that's the kind of stuff city needs today. And coronavirus has shown us that if we had done that 8 years ago, today coronavirus situation would be very different in Mexico. But we didn't do it because we lost political will on the way to do it.
And in that sense, I think it's also key how so many projects and so many things to change how things are have their own how do you call the people resist change many times, many times, and how key it is to have the drive to push through. And I would very much like
young people like you. We need young people like you in the government. You know, we need people in their 30s and 40s to bring about generational change. And I'm delighted that you decided to work in the government as opposed to in the private sector. We need more people, more Javier Giletas of the world in government.
Thank you, sir. You're always very generous with me, and I truly appreciate everything you've done and the leadership you've provided in order to teach me how to properly direct or think how things can change, and also how people are always important. And without the planet, things don't work, and we won't be here without a planet. So I'd like to thank you, and with this, we would end today's conversation, sir. Thank you very much.
And I believe this is available online, right? So I can tweet.
That is correct, sir. Yes. Okay. Yes, it will.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to switch to Spanish to thank our partner. And quiero agradecer a Centro Urbano por todo el esfuerzo y sobre todo este trabajo que hemos hecho en los distintos foros. Desde la Subsecretaría de Asuntos Multilaterales, mi subsecretaria, con el gran interés de impulsar los temas, siendo presidenta de la Asamblea de ONU Habitat, y a Horacio Urbano, que ha estado detrás y apoyando estas pláticas y sobre todo tratar de difundir distintas visiones de lo que es lo urbano. Y al final de lo que se trata es de una dimensión humana, de la dimensión del día a día y cómo entre nosotros interactuamos. Y espero que esta conversación, esta última serie de San Pitroda, sirva como cierre para recordarnos que lo que importa es los seres humanos, más allá de las estructuras en las que vivimos. Y con esto terminamos. Muchas gracias. Thank you very, very much, sir. And I look forward on speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.